Folks, happy Friday. Welcome to Freedom from the Press, episode number 4. My name's Jason Robertson. I'm here with my partner in crime.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Todd Peterson. We have a great show lined up today. This one's going to be a lot of fun. And Jason, I got my computer charged. No one's home to turn off the internet. It's going to be a good show.
I was going to say, for those who didn't see last week's show, we had a little internet snafu. I'm sitting there talking to Todd, yammering away, and all of a sudden it was like, where'd Todd go? Where'd Todd go? We had a little bit of an internet issue. Hey, but Todd, that's because our production staff was tied up doing the show, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Full team over here. They were tied up busy with other things. You know how it is.
Exactly. Well, hey, folks, there's a ton going on in the news. We've been covering things about Social Security, student loan scams, that sort of thing. We're facing government shutdown. The news is just getting wild. Ukraine's going crazy. But we wanted to take a break from some of the heavy stuff, and we want to talk about our friends on the left and do a prediction episode. And this is a little inside baseball. This is, who do you think is going to be the Democrat nominee in 2024? And it's going to be a fun journey. Todd, what are your thoughts?
Well, I want to do a little cliffhanger here. If you stick around to the end, Jason and I are going to make a hefty wager, and we're each going to name who we think the nominee is based on the information we offer up today.
Yeah. So as we're talking about, folks, take time, throw your thoughts in the chat. We'd love to hear from you to see what your thoughts are. So for those who don't know, the Democrat Party, just to give kind of an overview, and people don't really break down the Democrat Party as much. On the Republican side, we understand there's establishment Republicans who, in my opinion, are hot garbage. And then you have the MAGA wing of the Republican Party with President Trump, guys like Matt Gaetz, Kari Lake, some of those folks. And you can clearly identify that there's these two buckets on the Republican Party. And this just in the establishment Republican Party, they are not fighting for your values as an American citizen. But if you look on the left, they actually have really unique breakouts going, where on one side, they have your corporate money, very similar to establishment Republicans. That's kind of your Hillary Clinton camp. And they have merged with the ideological camp of the Barack Obama wing. So you've got kind of two of those wings that are forming, very similar to what we see on the MAGA side. But then you also have this third wing starting with RFK Jr., which, I mean, it's kind of their version of MAGA. So you've got these three parties kind of clashing. And what's kind of predicated this is we all see Joe Biden. Dude can't complete a sentence. Clearly, he's physically failing. There's many things going on. But for the first 2-3 years of his presidency, people have been running cover for him. The media is like, oh, nothing to see here. And everybody's like, oh, no, Joe Biden's great. But that's changed in the last 60 days. Todd, how do you think it's changed? Hey, I'd just like to give a shout out to Ron. Ron Adams drops the F-bomb. Not sure what we did to offend you yet, Ron, but stay tuned in. We're going to offend you even more.
And I'm going to offer and I'm going to use this word intentionally, liberal interpretation of Ron's comment. I hope he's saying that to the Democrat nominees and not to you and I, Jason.
I hope so. Like, we haven't even got to offend anybody yet. Shoot, we're like 4 minutes in.
No, like you said, the media ran cover for Joe Biden. If you remember, during the Trump administration, the Washington Post ran over 30,000 fact checks on him. He could have blown his nose and they would have said that he didn't use one Kleenex, he used two. Joe Biden got very little attention despite what we all recognize as obvious lies, misrepresentations of what was going on. But that is starting to change a little bit. Even CNN, the Washington Post, all of these stalwart organizations that defended the Democrat narrative years and years and years, suddenly they're saying Joe Biden might have some problems. And we're saying, that's nice that you're recognizing that, but then it also makes us wonder, what's the game afoot at play? What are they really trying to get at here? Because this isn't about them recognizing what we've seen all along. This is about them trying to manipulate the election to get their next person in the White House.
Yeah, and if you think Joe Biden was the perfect candidate for them in 2016, they ran Hillary Clinton. They screwed over Bernie, which we'll talk about later, from that progressive side, that ideological side. That's your Bernies, your Elizabeth Warrens, all those sorts of folks. And that's where kind of Barack Obama lived. And Hillary represented the establishment, money-driven side of the party. And Joe Biden was perfect because he wanted all the money and all the corruption All that stuff's coming out, but he was fine doing all the crazy ideological stuff.
And Jason, I'm going to jump into with the Biden nomination. We can talk about how the DNC got their preferred candidates in 2016 and 2020, but Biden presented to the American public, your regular folks that go to work, raise families, don't really pay attention to the news. They see Joe Biden as some moderate that's going to bring back, what did he say, responsibility or maturity or adulthood in the White House. We know that's a complete lie. We've seen everything that he did behind the scenes, but his public-facing persona was enough to convince folks that he was going to be that, moderate adults back in the White House and bring prestige back to the United States around the world. So they were really able to sell a lie with him when they put him in there.
Well, and it's interesting because, our podcast name is Freedom from the Press, because we feel the press is the enemy of the people. By the way, if you're tuning in, give us a like, comment, and share. That's how you help get our word out. We're just two guys who do stuff like this for a living, and your support really helps give us time to do this and hopefully share you some entertaining content. But if you look at the press, I call them normies. They're your neighbor who might watch an hour of news a day, who doesn't really pay attention. He doesn't dive into this. Todd watches 100 hours of C-SPAN a week. He sees these congressional hearings.
I hate myself.
Yeah. We clip them and we put them on social media because we know you're not going to see some of this stuff. And that's so important. The average person who might read the newspaper or watch a little CNN or even Fox News, they're not getting a very full picture of what's going on. And that's why this media shift on Joe Biden is so powerful, because when they did 30,000 fact checks on President Trump, they've done 0 on Joe Biden through his first 2-3 years of his presidency. And it's crazy. But Todd, how are they turning on Joe Biden?
Should we let CNN do the talking for us?
I think what better?
Let's get to that clip right here.
He has done, I don't know if it's similar things, but he's sort of told some stories that don't line up quite like this before.
Yeah, this president has a pattern at this point of either inventing or embellishing stories about his own past, his biography. He did it 3 times in one speech last month alone. He claimed he had witnessed a bridge collapse in Pittsburgh when he actually showed up about 6 hours later. He claimed that his grandfather had died just days before he was born himself at the same hospital. In fact, his grandpa died more than a year before in a different state, not the same hospital. And he also repeated a favorite false story that I and others have debunked over and over again about a supposed conversation with an Amtrak train conductor he was friends with, who was actually deceased at the time the conversation would have had to take place. And that's not all. There are some more serious ones in my view. Previously in his presidency, he claimed at one point he'd been arrested during a civil rights protest, when in other versions of the story he just said an officer had taken him home from a protest. He said he had visited the Pittsburgh synagogue where worshipers were killed in a 2018 mass shooting. In fact, he had actually spoken to the rabbi, but never went. And
how many people are aware of this laundry list of lies? And Jason, if you recall, in 1988, Biden had to drop out of the presidential election process when he got accused of plagiarism through law school. I mean, his lies stretch back decades.
Yeah, it's funny. Most people don't realize Joe Biden had to drop out 2 different times in presidential runs because of lying. And now he's dementia ridden and the guy can't complete a sentence. And
so you mentioned dementia, Jason. I'm going to pop up a comment from Robert. Thanks for listening and following along and engaging with this podcast here. But Robert says he don't know he's telling a lie. He don't even know his name. There's 2 ways to interpret this, right? Either Joe Biden is a crafty politician who plays the game very well, and he knows he's going to do these lies because no one's going to call him out in the media. I happen to think he doesn't know his name sometimes or where he wakes up in the morning, but I think it runs a little bit deeper than that. Joe Biden's been around a long time, and certainly the people in his immediate orbit know exactly what they're doing. They know the scripts to offer him. But again, CNN is even calling him out on this now, so the tide is turning.
Yeah, so to put that in perspective, to kind of frame up, what else do we have about Joe Biden? We had a couple more things we wanted to share.
Yeah, we do. Let's pull up a few more here.
So CNN throwing Joey from the bus.
John, in the past couple of weeks, the president has lied about being at Ground Zero the day after the September 11th attacks. Falsely claimed he saw the Pittsburgh bridge collapse.
I just have to pause this. If you're watching us live, look at Kirby's face right now. And to get inside that man's head, he knows he's going to have to come up with a huge lie any second. Disgusted that he's getting called out. He thought he was working for Joe Biden and no one would ever call them out on their lies. So this is priceless.
Grandfather died in the hospital days before his birth. What is going on with the president? Is he just believing things that didn't happen did happen, or is he just randomly making stuff up?
The president was deeply touched and honored to be able to spend 9/11 with military members there in Alaska and some families, and was honored by their presence and the chance to make an important set of remarks about why we need to continue to remember that day.
I heard the question pretty clearly. I did not hear an answer to that question, Jason.
Yeah, I was going to say, they start with, is he making this up or is he lying? And they're like, oh, he was honored to be in. Mark, we're with you. It's time to bring back FJB season.
Yeah, Jose, what do you expect from someone who has S for brains? Love the comments this morning. We're all there with you.
Right. It's spectacular. So you got and Todd, you touched on a great point. For those who watch these press conferences, and between the two of us, we probably watch virtually every press conference that they give. Yeah, we hate ourselves. And the media sits there and they just ignore it. They don't ask questions like, why was he lying about being at 9/11? You know, he claimed he was arrested going to see Nelson Mandela. Complete fabrication. And that look you see on Kirby's face is like, holy crap, these guys are really asking me this question. And he doesn't know what to do. He's just like shut down.
Yeah, and if you want to say it's the dementia game and Joe Biden just doesn't know what he's saying anymore, again, you go back decades of the same thing where he completely fabricated stories. He was not, as far as I'm aware, dementia riddled when he was talking about Nelson Mandela doing sit-ins in Delaware to fight civil rights, plagiarizing his way through law school. Presumably he had full cognitive functions back then, however limited. So it's a lot harder to explain why just now is this happening. So I tend to think that he's just lying because he knows he can get away with it.
Right. Do we got some more Joe Biden getting called out, Todd?
We don't, unfortunately. We could set up a whole hour of the show, Jason. I decided we keep it to 2 right now. I think we've made our point pretty well that the media is turning. No videos, but we do have also in written online media, if people read any more long articles like that. But the Atlantic, a very far left piece, they said step aside Joe Biden earlier this summer. The reasoning was that he has no business running for office at the age of 80. But I think we know the real reasons why they don't want him in there. And then the Washington Post is really what got this conversation started. So 9/11 conversation happened, and suddenly the next day the media started to say like, uh-oh, Joe Biden's a big liar. So the WAPO comes out with this headline, President Biden should not run again in 2024. I don't think they just woke up to his lies after the 9/11 comment. So again, it runs a little bit deeper than that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, and you see the worm turning. I mean, the Atlantic and the Washington Post, they have been running cover for Joe Biden for years, and they're acting like him lying is this new thing. The guy's been in politics since I think before I was born, and he has been lying the whole time. And these media operations just continue running things. And it's funny because, like Todd said, that's part of what prompted this. Is right after the 9/11 stuff came out, we're like, holy crap, they're actually calling him out on this stuff. Now, we've long suspected that he won't be the nominee because, like, he's too old. He couldn't campaign last time. They juiced him up with whatever they fed him to get him through a couple debates, but he was just in his basement. This time, I don't think Americans are going to stand up for being locked down. And then we also have to run into where Joe Biden's actually got to be out there, and he's got to be running against President Trump or whoever the Republican nominee is. He just can't physically do it and try to run the country. So you've got the cognitive decline. Personally, I think too that as more and more Americans see this impeachment stuff happen, we know we're never going to get the votes to get him impeached, but hopefully regular normie Americans can see the evidence that they have against Joe Biden and his corruption, because they literally have Hunter Biden saying, I'm selling influence in the government. Tell me what you want. Companies say, we want this, or countries say, we want this. They meet with Joe Biden, although he claims they didn't talk about that. Shortly after those meetings, a large sum of money was exchanged, and then Joe Biden enacts that policy decision. So you literally have every step with them handing Joe Biden the check. So,
And Jason, if you believe polls, right after the 2020 election, accordingly, 1 out of 6 Americans that voted for Joe would not have done so had that Twitter story not been suppressed by the New York Post when you weren't allowed to share links about the Hunter Biden laptop. One can only imagine if those numbers are accurate, how high is it now that more and more information is coming out and getting verified, and we're going through this process in the House right now to uncover more information. So if 16% would have taken back their vote in 2020, I mean, if you believe that, what is the number that wouldn't vote for Joe Biden again based on that? Or do people have such short memories that it doesn't matter by next year?
right. So you have a very flawed candidate, can't campaign, can't do anything. Todd, how are his approval numbers looking?
Not good, not good. But I do want to say one more thing, Jason, since we talked about age, and then we'll get into the approval numbers here. You and I didn't talk about this in 2020. I didn't think Joe Biden would be here by now. I didn't think he would make it to 2023 as the president of the United States for one reason or another. His age, I mean, he's at that average mortality rate, right? So age could have done it. They could have pushed him out with the 25th Amendment. Kamala Harris and her crew might have gotten in. The Clintons might have gotten back in. So I didn't think he'd be here for a variety of reasons. But here he is, and here he is talking about trying to run again in 2024. So there's that piece here. But in terms of poll numbers, the other thing that's working against Joe Biden right now is the fact that Americans have woken up to this. He got into office with some pretty impressive approval ratings. You know, given everything we know about him, it shouldn't be this high. But like we said, he was chosen by the DNC because he could pose as the moderate. He would win over the people that just didn't like Donald Trump. So he came in really high. But if you're looking at the graph here, he's up to 54% disapprove with just 41% approve. Seems hard to run a candidate with numbers like that and think you're going to have a chance to win.
Right. And it's remarkable too, because everyday Americans are seeing it and feeling it. You know, how many times do you see videos, even of Democrat voters, that show their shopping cart, how much they used to be able to get for $200, how much they got this week, or how much their grocery bill was. And then Joe Biden's so stupid. Like they come out and they tell you that, oh, the economy's doing great. And everybody's like, are you kidding me? I can't afford to pay my bills or buy groceries. And then they take a step further. Instead of just lying to you, they coin it Bidenomics. And I gotta say, with how the economy's looking, the last thing I would want my name associated with is the economy.
But that's what they do. They passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which only made inflation worse. I mean, you can't not pump billions of dollars of printed money into the economy and not expect prices to go up. But they sold that lie. They said, if you get money in your pocket for free, somehow that's going to make everything cheaper. Like, it just doesn't work like that. But that's what they do. They name things cleverly, and then people buy into it.
Right. Well, and so if you break it down, any more on Joe Biden, Todd?
Well, let's compare it to Trump here really fast. And then I know you want to get back into that poll. This is probably an apples to oranges comparison. But in 2019, a year out from Trump's presidency, we popped up the unfavorable and favorable of him as well. Donald Trump, though, always sat at like 60% unfavorable, and yet he still gained 10 to 15 million extra votes in the 2020 election compared to his 2016 run. So take those numbers with a grain of salt. You know, he gets polled, very unpopular, but then people turned out for him.
Right. And it's remarkable too, if you look at that trend line, think of all the stuff the media threw at him. I mean, it's the Russia stuff that's been debunked, and they reported on it breathlessly. Everything the guy did. If you remember, there was a 3-week news cycle about how he drank some water one time, where he was holding the cup at the bottom so it didn't spill on his soap tie. Or when he went down the ramp, and they're like, oh, he's cognitively inclined, you know, because he can't walk down the ramp. So it's been truly remarkable how much the media went at him. But if you look, people were smart enough to see through it and said, like, hey, the country's going pretty well. I mean, pre-COVID, economy was good. Other than leftists protesting and losing their minds in the street, like, the country, things are going pretty well.
Yeah, and it's only gotten better for him since then. They're trying with the indictments, but we've seen that's not sticking. People are waking up to that. They realize that it's just political attacks. There's no truth behind it. So you have all these events happening, the Russian collusion, the impeachment process, and now we have the indictments, but people just don't care anymore. They see it for what it is.
Right. And thank God people are waking up. And folks, another plug for the show. That's why we need you to share, like, comment, and share, especially hit that share button for content like this, because there are people, you know, that need to see this. And we're not out here saying, like, I'm going to vote for President Trump. Todd's going to vote for President Trump. But this is bigger than if it's Trump or Biden. This is exposing the corrupt political establishment on both the right and the left that's ruining the country. And that's where guys like President Trump, or even guys like, RFK Jr., who we'll talk about in a bit, these folks are not part of that establishment. And it's really important that we expose the establishment for what it is. They've run up $33 trillion in debt, folks. There's a $2 trillion deficit. A handful of Republicans are up there trying to get the spending under control or shut down the government, which it needs to be. Like, how long can you run those credit cards up? How many more billions can you send to other countries in aid? And how many more millions of people can we bring into the country? It's just unsustainable. So with that, we need to start looking at new polls. 75% of Democrat voters say they want somebody other than Joe Biden. So let's say you are like Todd and I, which you land on the fact that Joe Biden won't be the Democrat nominee. Todd, is that safe to say for you?
That's where my money's at right now, Jason.
All right. So first prediction, I'm writing this down. Both Todd and I say no on Joe Biden as
and the problem with our agreement is that we can't bet on it, but we'll have other bets later on.
We will have other bets later on. But hopefully, folks, let us know in the chat. Are you thinking Joe's out? Yes or no? I think the smart money, and everybody's on the FJB thing today. Thanks, Dee Dee. We should be wearing our FJB hats.
Next time, instead of our American Tribune hats, we've got them branded here. I think we need new hats, though.
Oh, we might.
Oh,
Hey, and for those who
thanks,
haven't checked it out, check out our website, theamericantribune.com and theamericantribune.news. One has more politically correct culture, entertainment, sports, politics. The other one, we do deep dives. This week we talked about how the United States helped fomented the seeds of war in the Ukraine. So we'd probably share that in the chat.
Yeah, let's pop that in there.
So anyways, getting back though. So if you start looking at, they're going to throw Joey from the bus. Now we need to start talking about what and how that looks. So right now, Todd, where are the primaries at on the Democrat side?
So let's pop that up here. So it recently changed. I know, Jason, you wanted to talk about that a little bit more here. So candidates have the next 90 days for them to submit their name, get on the roll here so that voters can go out and vote for them in the primaries here. Starting in February is when we start to see the action take place there. So it's going to kick off with South Carolina this year for Democrats. And then they're going to move on to Nevada and on to Michigan as well, which is a slight change if people have been following along for the last couple of years, decades. You always started in Iowa, right? You went to Iowa, New Hampshire. You got to get the breadbasket of America, people not exposed to mainstream media, people not living in hubs like New York City and Los Angeles. Iowa's pretty center of the country, both geographically and politically too. New Hampshire, pretty similar. You got some more independent thinkers out there. But the Democrats didn't like that because Iowa and New Hampshire might be an especially tough road for Joe Biden to pick up some early momentum.
Yeah. So to really kind of drill home what Todd was saying, Democrats are starting to rig the primary already. And we'll talk about Bernie Sanders in a minute, how they screwed Bernie over. And I'm no Bernie fan, but dude got played, and he got played and he got paid. But what you'll find is that historically, both Republicans and Democrats start with Iowa and New Hampshire. The reasoning behind that is they're not major media markets, and it's a little more kind of down to earth Americans is the perception. And, we're both from Minnesota. We can vouch in Iowa, like they don't have as much crazy stuff going on with.
Don't hold it against us for being in Minnesota. Minnesota's got its own problems.
Yeah, Minnesota's crazy. Like you wouldn't want it here. Like Minneapolis has lost its freaking mind. Up where we're at, we're north of the Twin Cities, not quite as crazy. We still get a lot of those policies that bleed out. But South Carolina, if you remember back in the last election, the 2020 election, that was where Jim Clyburn came out and supported Joe Biden. Joe Biden won that, and that ended up being his momentum to the nomination. So what they did is they push Iowa, New Hampshire back so that the first state is South Carolina. Now, another key point, she's from Minnesota, moved to Vegas.
Smart. Dee Dee knows what's up.
We were just talking, we got to go to Vegas, Dee Dee. We're trying to convince ourselves to take a trip out there. We hear there's gambling. But anyway, so so back to how it works. So not only did they move the primaries around so that the first primary is one of Joe Biden's best. The second thing they did is they eliminated debates. Now, so far, we've only had a couple people declare to run for the Democrat nomination, and it's been RFK Jr., who I kind of like the guy, and Marianne Williamson, which we don't have a lot on. I got to say, I love Marianne Williamson. I wish she was my neighbor. I don't want her to ever be my president, but she seems like just a nice lady, and she's crazy. I mean, she's nuttier than a fruitcake, but she's a super nice lady. So Democrats already no debates. We're gonna run a primary, and we're gonna change the schedule so that the first primary is Joe Biden's, one of his strongest. Now, another thing to think about this calendar laying out. For all these primaries, you have to file papers to declare for the majority of them, to declare you want to run for president. So if they're going to throw Joey from the bus pre-primaries, they actually need to say, okay, Joe's off the bus. All these folks you see on there need to declare, otherwise for them to get the nomination. So you have to, like Nevada, no, October 16th, you have to file paperwork to be considered in the primary. And if you are, and you meet the certain number of signatures and whatever, when the primary comes up in March, you'll be on the ballot. So if you look, there's about 20 states in the next 90 days that have those filing deadlines. So kind of question two, okay, is Joe going to be a candidate? Yes or no? That's question one. Question two is, do they throw Joey from the bus before the primary start? Because if they do that, these other folks need to start filing.
And that's where it gets interesting, because how do they do that, Jason? What is their mechanism to get Joe to not run again in 2024?
And if you look, some of these offshoot candidates like Big Mike, Kamala, Greasy Gavin, and RFK, he's already declared. But do you really think that Gavin Newsom would be able to file papers in the next 90 days unless something happens with Joe Biden?
Speaking of Gavin, should we hear what he has to say about it?
Let's hear from Gavin.
This has got to be devastating to him.
You and Vice President Kamala Harris go way back.
Yep.
You say that you came up together in San Francisco, knew each
Before
other.
we were in politics.
Before you were in politics. I'm sure you saw that.
I wonder what that means, Jason.
Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, she heaped praise on Kamala Harris, but she declined to say whether or not she thought that the vice president is the best person to be on the ticket with Joe Biden in 2024. Do you?
Of course she is. The Biden-Harris administration, masterclass in terms of performance. Bipartisan deals on infrastructure, bipartisan deals on guns and debt ceiling, on the chips and science.
She's the best choice.
I mean, by definition, if I think this administration the last 2.5 years has been one of the most outstanding administrations in the last few decades, and she's a member of that administration, she gets to lay and claim credit.
There's a lot to unpack there. The first thing is that we all know it's not the best administration in the last several decades. We know he's lying through his teeth about that part. So is he lying through his teeth about getting behind Biden and Harris right now too?
Right. Well, and it's funny because we all see the awfulness that is Joe Biden. Let's take a sec to unpack how bad Kamala Harris is. You know, she has a checkered political career. She made her name as a prosecutor who basically overcharged the African-American male community and bragged about throwing him in jail for decades. She was banging Mayor Willie Brown. That's how she came to be. She was running for president in 2016, and we should have pulled the clip, but if you remember, Tulsi Gabbard just annihilated her debate one, and Kamala Harris was over. Her campaign was doing so poorly, she dropped out before the California primary, and she was a senator from California, which is the most left state in the nation. And Kamala, she didn't want to go through the embarrassment of still being a presidential candidate and getting 3%.
And she always polled around 1% the entire time. America did not want Kamala Harris. She has never spoken well. Her past is well publicized, and I think everyone's at least aware of that. But Jason, how do you get rid of a black woman from this ticket?
Well, this presents kind of the next problem, and that's going to be our bonus question at the end, Todd, is hopefully everybody can look at Kamala Harris. She's cackling. She's awful. She's not very bright. Half the time, I think she's hammered when she's doing an interview or stoned. I mean, literally, next time you watch Kamala Harris speaking, think like that's the dude at the bar who's 6 beers in. And you'll be like, oh, that is like she's just hammered.
Yeah.
It's
And
not
even
a
if we're
big
being generous and saying she's sober, she is. Joe Biden has an excuse. He's lost his brain. Like this, it's all fudged over. But Kamala Harris is doing her best, and she still sounds awful.
right. So I think we can both agree, not to put words in your mouth, Todd, but there's just no way in hell they can run Kamala Harris.
They can't. They just can't. They can't put her back on the ticket. They can't put her on that VP debate stage. We don't know who. I think that'll be a good episode down the road of who should Trump choose for his vice president. But I just picture Vivek Ramaswamy getting next to her on a debate stage and just ruining her.
Oh my gosh. And even if you look at her policy accomplishments, what's the first thing she was put in charge of, Todd, when she became vice president?
Well, she was going to find out the root cause of the border crisis, Jason.
Because she's the border czar. And how's that going for her, Todd?
Last I checked, we've had millions of entries, 1.5 that didn't even get engaged by border control. We have a lot of people here. You can watch videos every day. We've done a border episode. We've done a border Substack. But you can just watch videos. You have these streams of people just walking in, all young adult male, by the way. Where are their families? Why are just young men coming to this country? That has its own concerns. But no, there has been nothing but chaos at the border. It's only gotten worse. And here she is 2.5, 3 years later. Certainly not. We all know the root cause of the problem, by the way. Just stop people from coming. So we know how to fix the problem. We know what the problem is, but no, she has not tackled that in the least.
She's not done that. They made her the AI czar. They put her in charge of several different things. Now they started a new approach where they're going to try to eliminate gun violence. I can't remember the name of the committee, but it was just announced this morning that she's going to be the head of preventing gun violence in America. So Kamala's going to be in charge of taking your guns. Congratulations.
Well, she'll be coming after our guns, Jason. She won't be going to the inner city where the gun problems actually exist. Let's just be clear about that.
Yeah, she won't be taking criminals' guns or encouraging them to get locked up. She's just going to...
Even the New Mexico governor admitted they're not going to be able to get guns out of criminals, but they did want to ban the Second Amendment for everyone else.
Right. So anyway, so Kamala Harris, truly bad candidate. We don't think she can run. One last stat too. So I do another podcast during the week, and Hutch on there. Shout out to Hutch Bailey Jr., Cold War Radio. He's great, and he broke down the numbers, and he said in the last month, he's from Pennsylvania, more illegals have come into the country than the population of Pittsburgh. So if you think of that, Pittsburgh's a pretty big city, and it's over the last 90 days. And it's like, so in 90 days, we've had the entire city of Pittsburgh walk across the border into
Well, and
America.
Jason, I'll one up you on that point, and then we can get back to the presidents here. But since Biden took office, we've had more illegal immigrants come in than the population of 15 states have entirely. So picture Minnesota. We have 5.5 million people. Picture all of those illegal immigrants just moving to Minnesota, and that is the new population. You can't even wrap your head around how many folks have entered this country.
Yeah, and you know what? If we vetted them, and I mean, I've said it before on this and other shows, I think immigrants are some of the best Americans because they're usually leaving a terrible country and wanting to adopt our way of life. Capitalism, they want to work hard, raise their families. I mean, let's be honest, most people are pretty quiet like us. You want to get up, you want to watch some TV, you want to raise your kids, you want to be able to afford to buy some decent stuff. Like, that's what most Americans are, Republican or Democrat. And that's what immigrants coming to the country are. But these people sneaking across the border, many of them, that's not there. They aren't coming here to make America better or to assimilate with our way of life. And that's why it breaks down. So anyway, so now we have to talk about Kamala Harris. I think we can all agree, Todd, Kamala Harris won't be the nominee.
Yeah, so you and I right now are in agreement here. Joe Biden is not on the ticket in 2024. If he's gone, Kamala Harris is gone too. So that opens it up entirely for the field.
Right. So now we need to talk about who are some of the candidates. Todd, who do you want to break down first?
I like RFK, and he's polling second right now among Democrats. So maybe we start with him.
Let's go with RFK Jr.
But
So you
go
want to
for it.
start?
I was just going to pop up how RFK is being presented right now, though. So we've established that the media is turning on Joe Biden. Jason and I agree that Joe Biden will likely not be the candidate in 2024 for a couple of reasons here. But his main competitor right now, polling around 14% among Democrats, he is not received well by the media. Let's say that. So the media doesn't like Joe anymore. We don't know who's pulling the media strings in that. But they certainly don't want his main competitor right now. Wikipedia describes him as an anti-vaccine activist, conspiracy theorist. They're throwing out all the buzzwords that you would kind of associate with Donald Trump, basically. But they're throwing those labels on him, too.
So if I can take an aside on RFK Jr., I like the Kennedy family. Bobby, JFK. I mean, they were a little before my time, but I like what they do. I remember the speech where they're talking about like destroying the intelligence state and scattering it to the wind shortly before they got shot in the head. We could do a whole episode on the JFK assassination and the deep state's involvement in that. But I think the Kennedys, even though I didn't always agree with their policy positions, I think, and they were part of that establishment, I think they were kind of like President Trump, where I always got the sense they want to make life better for the American people. And that's part of the attraction of President Trump is, even though he's in when I knew I loved President Trump is when he was standing up on the debate stage with Hillary, and Hillary says, oh, you're a tax cheat, rah, rah, rah. And he's like, no, I just follow your rules. Your rules are designed to be exploited by rich people. So change the rules. And I'm like, oh, that guy's it. And Dee Dee, she's nailing it today. For me, I think what's unique about RFK Jr. is I think he loves America. I think he has a different vision for America than I do in a lot of his policy positions. Honestly, I probably vote for RFK Jr. over an establishment Republican. Like I say, I don't like all of his policy positions, but I think he generally is going to go in there and try to do what he feels is best for the American people.
And Jason, I mean, along those lines there, I mean, we're not going to find any candidate that we find 100% alignment with, but RFK touches on the big points, right? So he wants to break up the deep state. He recognizes, so we had to have something. I want to make a comment. I don't know if Facebook will allow with that beeping in the background, but I think there's a meme that goes with that. But RFK recognized what happened during the pandemic. He saw what government can do when it gets too powerful. And I think these are ideas that resonate with a lot of people across political lines here. So he's saying the right things right now. But again, why doesn't the mainstream media like him? I think it's because he's attacking their position, their power, and resonating with a lot of people right now.
And this is where the brains on the lefts are going to blow up, because Democrats, especially older Democrats, love the Kennedy family. I mean, no matter what they did, I mean, they had Senator Ted Kennedy, who killed somebody in his car, and they still kept electing him. I mean, they, we go into Chappaquiddick at some point, but I mean, the Kennedy family is pretty beloved. And I think the average American kind of likes Kennedy family. They like the idea of blowing up the deep state. Nobody's going to be more pissed at the deep state than RFK Jr. Like, how many family members?
If anyone has beef with the deep state, it's this guy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so you got RFK Jr., but for Democrats, where this is interesting is they're coming at him with all the same lines on Trump. And he's a conspiracy theorist. He's this, that, and the other thing. He's Satan. At some point, Democrats are going to wake up and go, this dude's a Kennedy. And they're going to hear him speak, which is why they don't want him on the debate stage. And they're going to say, the media's lying to us. So pay attention to that for your Democrat friends. When they start hearing RFK speak, and then they say, why is CNN telling us this? But I just heard him give an interview on a podcast, and that's not what he said. For example, they call him a vaccine conspiracy theorist. What he says, and it's true, is that we've never done long-term studies for the impacts of vaccine on kids. And if you look at some medical conditions, there is a matching trend line for when we increased vaccines and when some of these medical conditions like autism and stuff increased. Not saying that there's any relation between those. YouTube, Facebook, don't shut us down. But just saying he's calling for that stuff to be investigated because they've never done things on it. They've never done.
And why wouldn't we want to know that, right? So he's not saying that is a correlation. He's saying right now it looks like that could be. Let's investigate that a little bit more. Why don't we just know the truth when we send our kids to the doctor's office?
Right. So anyway, so RFK Jr., he's the only declared. They're not going to let him on the debate stage. My prediction Well, we'll get to it at the end. But if you don't see some of these other big names declare for president in the next 90 days, you're never going to see RFK Jr. on a debate stage. Here's what's tricky too, is if some of these other big names start declaring, they have to start relooking at the process and saying, hey, we might need to have debates. And if you've heard RFK Jr. talk, the last thing you don't want is him on the stage with Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, even Gavin Newsom, those sorts of things.
Yeah, if they thought Joe Biden could be presented as a moderate, RFK is an actual moderate who speaks plainly and speaks truth, and a lot of Democrats like him. And look, Dee Dee just posted it up there. You and I both said, like, if he were the nominee, like, we'd have some thinking to do, right? Like, a lot of people would have to decide, do we want the right-wing MAGA with Trump, or you equated him to Donald Trump previously. He's kind of the MAGA version on the left. Like, that would be a very interesting dynamic in the general election if you have two outside establishment folks running.
Oh, that would be spectacular. Do we have anything
But they don't want that, so they're not going to let that happen.
Yeah, they're going to block that. Although he's talking running third party. And an interesting thing I saw today as a side. So Ron DeSantis has online, especially Twitter influencers that are supporting him. And he's lost like 2 or 3 today in the failing Ron DeSantis campaign to RFK Jr. Like, that was kind of a fun part.
Very interesting. And look, you and I both support what DeSantis is doing down in Florida. He's a fantastic governor. Every red state needs a DeSantis, but he surrounded himself by the wrong folks, it seems like, or he got aligned with the bad money. His campaign is floundering for a variety of reasons, but we like DeSantis. But yeah, very interesting to see DeSantis folks jumping ship to RFK. Again, that's that middle ground in America where people, they're kind of seeing the similar message on both parties there, but they might be going to a candidate they see who has a better shot, at least in the general.
Well, yeah, and if you talk about Ron DeSantis, I mean, I was a big Ron DeSantis fan right up until after his reelection as governor, when it became clear he was just gearing up for a presidential run. And for me, it's not about like, oh, it's Trump, you shouldn't run against him. For me, it was he climbed in bed with all the big money that's ruined the Republican Party. And if you think you get to take millions of dollars from those big money donors to run for president and the big PAC money and all that stuff, and if you don't think strings are attached to that, like, I got swampland to sell you in Florida. Like, you know that, and that's what's ruined the Republican Party, the big money. Kevin McCarthy, he controls the House because he controls the money. It's remarkable. All right, what else do we have on RFK Jr.?
All right, RFK. I think that's all we have for RFK. Let me scroll through a few of them. Nope, I think that's all we got at him. Should we move on? We've done Kamala, we've done RFK. What do you think? A little more Gavin Newsom, or do you want to get into Big Mike?
I think we got to go greasy Gavin.
Fair enough. So he seems like, you look at, he's got a lot of favorability in media headlines. I mean, he's got the hair, he's got the attitude. He's in California, so he's a big state guy with a lot of media recognition, national recognition. He seems to be, if you were going to move Biden out, kind of an up-and-comer too in those California politics. So Kamala sneaks through there as well. A lot of connections connected to the Pelosi's. So he's got that going for him. He's got the donations going for him. And Americans, I mean, like it or not, like, we look at someone and we kind of make a decision and we don't even look at their politics. So how many people would vote for Greasy Gavin just because he's a good-looking dude?
I was going to say Gavin Newsom, very skilled politician. There's talk that he might be debating Ron DeSantis in like governor versus governor in the next. They keep changing the dates. They haven't nailed it down. I'm just going to tell you, get Gavin Newsom on a debate stage. And I hate Gavin Newsom. I think he is one of the most awful people. He has run an awful state. He's trying to destroy California. Dude's a really good politician, and he is a really good debater. He's a really smooth talker. I mean, he can sell you a pile of shit and you thought it was a bag of gold, man. I mean, he's one of those guys. The other thing that's really good with Gavin Newsom is, I talked earlier how you have the ideological wing of the party with the Bernies and the Elizabeth Warrens and all the crazies that want to make a socialist. And then you have the big business end with the Hillarys and the Chuck Schumers and those folks. Gavin's kind of like Joe Biden, where he melds the two of them. Like, he'll support any crazy social initiative you want, as long as he gets paid and as long as he gets the money. But if you look at California just passing laws that if you're going through a divorce, let's say, and you don't affirm your child's gender identity, they can take your kid from you. Like, you might not get visitation. I mean, all the crazy stuff. And we've seen, and California, you can't run on how good California is. I mean, they literally have apps that map out in their major cities where there's human feces. Like, somebody actually invested the time and money to maintain apps about where all the crap is. So Gavin Newsom, dangerous politician, really smooth. His track record in California is god awful. He can't run on that, but the media is going to run interference for him. So he is an interesting choice. But Todd, what's the one problem with Gavin Newsom?
You're going to leave myself scratching my head here, Jason. I'm thinking of what the main problem is here.
Huh? You got a straight white dude.
Uh-oh. We can't do that. So you're telling me that we're going to replace Kamala Harris, who was a historic first, and you're going to put another white guy up there despite all of the talking points about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
How's that going to go over, Todd?
Sounds to me like he has an opportunity for another running mate. But you know what, Jason? These guys are all talk. Let's be honest. Like Joe Biden, straight white dude. Who did they pick in 2020? The straight white guy. They had a gay former mayor. They had this black female and Kamala Harris. They had lots of options to go to the diversity pool. But at the end of the day, they're not going to do that. They don't care about what they're saying. They're going to go with the person that has the best chances at election. And not because a white man is necessarily de facto because of his white maleness. However, Gavin Newsom, like you said, he checks all the boxes with his slickness, his talking. I mean, he's just very good at what he does.
Yeah, he's a great politician. Personally, as I look at Gavin Newsom, the one hurdle is the Kamala problem. And I think if you look at Kamala Harris and what the Democrats can't win without large support of black females. I mean, I hate to say it, but if you look at the voting demographics, and if you look, while many Americans think Kamala Harris is like the worst thing ever, a lot of Gen Zers and a lot of African-American females, she actually polls pretty well. And the Biden administration, by picking somebody as awful as Kamala Harris, has kind of painted themselves in a corner. Where that's going to be our bonus question at the end, Todd, is how are they going to get rid of Kamala? And if so, how do they do it?
Yeah, Joe Biden is easy. Kamala Harris is a little trickier.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating what they do. But now let's move on to our last candidate, unless you had anything else.
Here's the, I'm saying dark horse. I don't mean that because of anything else here, Jason. But we have Michelle Obama, former first lady to Barack, who was a very popular president. I think less so in hindsight. I mean, you and I never agreed with him, but among America, certainly popular. She was able to present herself for 8 years as this glamorous, glorious, magazine covers, the whole 9 yards. So she has been out of politics, but never really out of the media circle still. She does her book tours. She does her speaking engagements. And she carries the Obama name, which still has a lot of weight in the Democrat voting circles.
Right. And I got to say, Michelle Obama, whatever you think, and I'll be honest, I voted for Barack the first time. I really believed what he said, that he would try to. I thought the Republican Party was corrupt. I wasn't like the clowns they were throwing up. I'm like, they're just going to get us in another war and send Americans over there to die and give more tax breaks to the rich and ruin the economy. But Barack, I kind of bought his BS the first time. And I'm like, let's give this guy a shot. He's a little bit of an outsider. He hasn't been in politics that long. He's talking about some of the right things. Michelle Obama, too, like on the left, the Barack and Michelle like coins are like the best-selling collector coins of all time. She polls extremely high. And not only does she poll high, where a lot of people on the left, because she's never actually done anything. So like, she's never run a business. She's never been in elected office, really. So there's no track record to run on. She says the right things. She hates politics is what she says. And that's probably and that's what she says. And the biggest obstacle is I don't see Michelle Obama becoming that candidate who wants to get out there and grind and, go to 3 cities in 3 days to do rallies or whatnot. And Todd, do we have that clip from Ted Cruz where he kind of talks about kind of his
let's see what Ted says about Michelle.
It's just the kingmaker saying, nope, we pick you. Whoever doesn't get picked, everyone else is pissed. So here's the scenario that I think is perhaps most likely and most dangerous. In August of 2024, the Democrat kingmakers jettison Joe Biden and parachute in Michelle Obama. And I want you to pause and reflect on that.
Oh, I'm pausing and I'm reflecting as we said, and so is everybody else listening right now.
I view this as a very serious danger.
I'm smiling right now because it terrifies me, and I also could totally see this happening.
So, Michelle Obama, number one, you don't infuriate African-American women, which is a critical part of the constituency that Democrats are relying on to win. But number two, you avoid the problem. If you pick from any of the four, the other three are pissed because they're all, to some extent, peers, they're rivals, they're all jabbing knives at each other. Michelle Obama, because she was first lady, has the ability to kind of parachute in above all four and say, hey, we're not picking among any of you. You guys can all fight it out next time. You're all going to be on the same level. We're coming. This is the Obamas saving the day. And I think in terms of a solution that unifies Democrats, there ain't nothing like that. I also think Michelle is not all that eager to run for president. But to parachute in August of 24, a couple of months before the presidency, and suddenly wake up and be president,
not a bad gig.
It's not a bad gig at all.
So that's an interesting analysis from Cruz, and I have a hard time poking holes in it. So Jason, previously you talked about having to register, right, to get on the ballot in some of these primaries. So you set a timeline of 90 days. So if I want to declare my nomination in the next 90 days, I got to get on South Carolina's ballot, Nevada's ballot, Michigan's ballot. So that's step one. But what Cruz talks about in step two is like, skip all of that. Let these guys fight it out. Don't do debates. Don't just go through the process, but whatever. But then wait until August when they have their convention and then just say, you know what? We were never excited about these guys anyways. And look, lo and behold, we can just go pick Michelle right out of the crowd and she's our nominee.
You know, it's funny. So to understand the corruption of the Democrat Party when it comes to primary, I promised earlier I was going to tell the Hillary Bernie story for those who don't know. So the Democrat Party, we've already talked about how they changed the rules to set up the strongest primary for Joe Biden as the first one, so he gains momentum. If you go back to 2016, and this came out late, and actually, fun fact, this came out in the WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, where they hacked all the emails. There was the Podesta stuff about hot dogs. That'll be an episode we won't put on YouTube or Facebook. But what came out, and it's been confirmed to be true, is that the Democrat National Committee going into 2015 had, and this is the non-affiliated official party. So this isn't like a PAC or something like that. They had $20 million in debt from the 2012 Barack Obama thing. So they had 20 million in debt. Hillary declares she is the side of the big money. We said that at the beginning. The Hillary Clinton campaign says we will take the debt from the Democrat National Committee into our campaign, and then we will be in charge of the finances for the Democrat National Committee. So that means from day one through all the primary season, the Hillary Clinton campaign was deciding how the Democrat National Committee was spending their money. Also, the DNC, as part of that deal, got the big money donors, think Ron DeSantis, on the Republican side. They got them to put their money and support behind Hillary Clinton. So she had this war chest of money. So that's why if you go back 2015, 16, that period, that's why Joe Biden didn't declare. That's why none of the other serious people, serious in quotes, like Elizabeth Warren or those guys declared. The only one who did really was crazy Bernie Sanders. And going into the convention, Bernie Sanders actually was very close behind in delegates. And they dropped this WikiLeaks story. And all the Bernie bros wasn't covered by the media once again, because they don't talk about this stuff. The Bernie bros were pissed because they're like, wait a second, Hillary Clinton running all the money, all the events. And then it came out that Donna Brazile, who was the head of the DNC, was giving debate questions to the Hillary Clinton campaign before debates, whereas they weren't doing that for Bernie. So the whole thing was rigged against Bernie. And there was enough, it was close enough that they could have made a stink at the convention and people could have flipped because that came out right before the convention. But as history shows, that didn't happen. But what did happen with Bernie Sanders, Todd?
Well, don't feel bad for Bernie. He's doing okay. He remained a Democrat. I don't know if he's affiliated with him or not technically, but don't worry. He voted lockstep for Democrats. He got book deals. He has his 3 houses. He's doing quite fine as a communist. And then he tried to get in 2020. So he went through the process. He might have been bitter, but that didn't stop him from taking advantage of the system.
And that actually is kind of a sad thing. Once again, Bernie Sanders, I always kind of thought he at least believed in what he said. He's a communist. He has horrible ideas and he wants to destroy the country. But I kind of believed him. And that's where politicians are tough. He had the chance to call out the Democrat Party in 2016, like President Trump has been doing to the establishment Republican Party. Instead of doing that, he took the knee and he took the book deal. And Bernie Sanders' wealth since his 2016 campaign has gone up astronomically. And if you want a fun fact, you can go look and you can see how much money he's made off his book deals. But one number that's hard to find is it's really hard to find out how many books he sold. Like, it's not on bestseller lists. It hasn't, you can't even get the data for how many millions of dollars. And I think the number's up to like $10 million from book companies. So it's just fascinating. I mean, maybe it's all legit. Maybe he sold that many books and that was his thing. But it's ironic that a guy who's been in politics as long as he had never had any money till he ran for president. And then he had the chance to stand up and call out the corruption. And he took a knee. He took a knee. But anyways, so we got Big Mike. We know the Democrats won't hold to their rules, so they could totally go into their convention, which is next August, and say, hey, we're going to rewrite the rules. We're going to pick somebody else.
Okay, Jason. So is it wager time?
I think it's wager time. And I think as I framed this up, there was kind of 4 questions that I had. And I think we go whoever gets the most out of 4. And some of these we are going to agree. Question 1, is Joe Biden going to be the nominee?
That's a no. He's not walking out next August as a nominee.
Right. Question 2, do they pull the pin before the primary season so they're forced to run primaries, or do they wait and try to pull the pin at the convention?
I think Joe Biden goes to the primaries, and then I think he gets the pin pulled.
You are with me. Why do you think that, by the way?
So now that we see the media opening up their eyes a little bit, we had, here, I'll pop this up again as well. We have the Atlantic pointing out his age. He's going to be 80 running for office. We have the known dementia problems here. I think this is an opportunity to embarrass and humiliate Joe Biden one final time. Get him up there. Maybe don't give him the juice or give him the wrong juice, right? And he's going to be up there and just look like an absolute fool. And that's going to tell Americans it's time to move on.
Right. So now, question 3. So we've agreed on 2 questions. Folks, put your notes in the chat for what you think. Do you think they're going to run Joe 1? 2, do you think they get rid of him before the primary or not? This is tricky. Todd and I are both saying they're going to wait, get through the primary. I think they're not going to get rid of him before the primary because of RFK Jr. Because if they open it up and you get RFK Jr. on the debate stage, he will be your nominee. That's just
absolutely.
My opinion. So they got to take, so unless RFK Jr. has a medical emergency like his dad and his uncle or whatever they were from the CIA, you will not see it happen until after. All right,
Jason,
Todd,
just as an aside too, my last Joe Biden point is it's a little cleaner to run him in the primaries and just have him play himself out. It's a lot harder right now, I think, just to push Joe Biden out. Jill has intimated she's not going anywhere. I think she certainly wants to get back in the White House. And so you avoid a lot of that infighting of negative press, and you just let Joe Biden, wander off aimlessly into that proverbial sunset, right, and go probably in the wrong direction to the sunrise. But that's the play for the Democrats right now, as I see it.
There you go. So then we show up at the convention, Todd. Who do they nominate?
Okay, this is where you and I differ. We had a little pre-show chat about this. I think I'm in alignment with Ted Cruz. I had my own thoughts before listening to Ted, but Ted really solidified it for me. I think Big Mike comes and swoops in. She solves the problem of what do you do with Kamala Harris? So we eliminate the black woman vote. I got to guess she's more popular among black women voters anyways, so she's an upgrade in terms of that. She has the Obama name. She doesn't have much as dirt as we could probably dig up on the Obamas here, the public is not aware of any major scandal with her. I think her track record of not holding office works in her favor as well. She has no real record to run on, so no failures to run on in that sense. So she's very easy to prop up by the media.
I see the Big Mike thing being a strong potential. And it was funny you said that. I've been chewing on that, and then I saw Ted Cruz's podcast. I'm like, he's hitting all the right points. Here's the thing I land on, though, is I don't know if Michelle Obama is enough of a crazy globalist person that's going to want to do it. I think if she could drop in and become president, it might be a thing. I just think Gavin Newsom is too smooth, and he's too much of a politician. He likes and he wants it. I think he's that, like, you can't put up Elizabeth Warren because she's crazy, but she doesn't necessarily fit the big money mold. I think Gavin Newsom kind of falls in that line where I'm big money Democrat, so I can be bribed, but I'm okay doing all the crazy stuff that the left wing of the party wants. So this is where we're going to differ. You're going Big Mike. I'm going Gavin Newsom, but it leaves one final question, Todd. This is a bonus question. And that is, how do they get rid of Kamala?
And that's the answer I don't have right now. So she's interesting. I think the easiest play right now is you let Joe Biden. They've been the Biden-Harris campaign the entire time. Joe Biden humiliated himself all the time saying, this Biden-Harris administration, which has never happened before, the Trump administration, the Obama administration, he never named her vice president. I think she goes with him. So they trot them out together. Joe Biden takes the fall, and then Kamala Harris loses her president, and then she just kind of disappears as well. They can't make a show of this whatsoever. They can't go out and explicitly remove this black female, ceiling breaker. But if she's attached so close to him in that way, I think that gives them that nice, easy boot where you're a package. So Joe's gone, therefore you're gone.
Oh, so Todd's going just drift into the sunset.
Here we are.
This is where I am going with my conspiracy theory hat. I think that Kamala Harris, when they get rid of her, it is going to be for a large global initiative that they want her to head.
Play this out for me. I'm interested. I don't agree right now, but I'm fascinated by your theory here. So play this out for me.
So here's what I'm thinking is that if you look, part of what the left wants to do is move into some sort of global initiative yet to be named. If you go real deep conspiracy theory, it's the New World Order, it's that kind of stuff. But we can agree that there's a class of rich, powerful elites who want to globalize everything, from big money, big pharma, big tech, military industrial complex, all those people, they're the ones that control the uniparty, the establishment Republicans, the Democrats. And I think we're gearing up for something where you see all this World Economic Forum, you see NATO, which is kind of the driving force behind the Ukraine stuff. And you see BRICS rising up, which is kind of Russia, China, Brazil, India, all those folks that are forming their own thing. I think you're going to have to see a global initiative that launches to offset BRICS, which is kind of along the lines of NATO. And I think that Kamala Harris, they're going to put in charge of it to let and make it sound like a promotion, like she's going to be in charge of this yet to be named global initiative. Could be 100% wrong. I'm going deep in the weeds there, but I'm just saying I'm going to predict it's going to be some global initiative to offset BRICS, and they need somebody to lead it, and they're going to pick Kamala Harris because it solves the she can't get elected problem, and it keeps the U.S. in line with somebody like Gavin Newsom. That's my prediction.
I'll say this. If it happens, I wouldn't be surprised in the least. So I'm glad we get to differ so we can put some money on some bets here. But if it happens, again, that falls in line with exactly what they're doing. Okay, I got a bonus question for you, and then we got to wrap up. We're running over an hour here. Yeah. Gavin Newsom, he gets nominated. Who's his vice president, Jason?
It'll be a diverse hire. I don't know who that is. I could see somebody like a Susan Rice. I was kind of surprised they didn't pick her last time. But they've got to check at least 2 or 3 of the equity boxes. So they've got to be ethnically diverse, female or gay, LGBTQ. And right now I'm just not seeing it. Mayor Pete, you'd end up with 2 white dudes. So I don't think you can. And Mayor Pete's terrible. Like nobody ever knew who the transportation secretary was until Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Like seriously, can you name any transportation secretary ever? So I don't know.
Jason. Do you want to get into Mitch McConnell?
Oh my God. Yes, I'd love to. But anyways, yeah, who's your pick for that, Todd?
I was curious if you'd say Big Mike. I didn't know if you saw her swooping in August, same sort of deal. You know, maybe they rally around Newsom. Maybe he wins in the primaries legitimately. And maybe they swoop in someone as a vice president too, kind of along the same lines. So I'm kind of agnostic right now about that. But again, anything's possible. The DNC is going to choose who they think is most electable. Man, you put our 2 top candidates in there, Newsom, Obama. That's kind of a formidable ticket if you're running against them, because they check all the boxes. They're both really slick with words, and they've got the name recognition.
I could see the Newsom Big Mike, and VP is largely a ceremonial role where you don't have to do much. That's an interesting one. We hadn't talked about that.
No, we
Yeah,
hadn't.
I could even see if you go really crazy. Let's go really crazy for a sec, Todd. Take a Supreme Court justice seat, and that's their exit ramp for Kamala Harris to go on to the Supreme Court.
It's not out of the question.
Yeah, that could be you got me thinking now. We're going to have to revisit this. Folks, hopefully you find this fun. Do us a favor, like, comment, share. I especially encourage you to share our podcast with your friends that you don't politically agree with. We try to be pretty centrist. If you haven't got the vibe, we think the government sucks. We like outsiders politically. We think our ruling class is ruining America. Part of how you can support the show, you can subscribe to our channels, but really help get the word out. That's what we do. Also leave some notes in the comments. Who do you think? How do you think it falls out on the Democrats?
Yeah, maybe there's someone we forgot entirely right now. Again, someone that's not on this list here. These look like the top 5 right now, but you never know. A year is a long time in politics.
Right. Todd, I'll let you close out and bring us home.
The final word. Well, thanks for joining us today. Loved the comments, loved the engagement here. Jason, we had a flawless episode, I'll say. Our videos worked. The internet didn't get shut off here. And it was a fun discussion to kind of brainstorm what the Democrats look like in the next year. So thanks for tuning in, everyone.
All right.
Have a great weekend.